You're sitting at your desk, staring at a never-ending to-do list. The weight of expectations, your career, your family, even your own dreams, feels like it's pressing down on you. You scroll through social media, watching everyone else post their perfect lives, their flawless accomplishments. You feel stuck, unsure of what's real anymore, and you begin to wonder, why can't I have it all together like they do? Here's the thing. Most people are living behind a mask. What you see online or even in person often isn't the truth. It's a carefully crafted illusion designed to impress. And in chasing those illusions, many of us lose touch with something crucial, ourselves. So, let me ask you this. Are you ready to break free? Are you ready to stop doubting yourself, take control of your life, and start living with clarity and purpose? If so, you're in the right place. In this video, we'll uncover powerful, timeless strategies rooted in Stoicism, strategies backed by modern psychology and neuroscience. These aren't just abstract ideas, they're practical steps you can use today to conquer self-doubt, embrace challenges, and create lasting personal growth. Before we dive in, do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe to Stoic Narratives Official. Together, let's unlock the strength you've had within you all along. Your journey starts here. The power of small wins, overcoming overwhelm. Well-being is realized by small steps, but is truly no small thing. This quote from the Stoic philosopher Epictetus serves as a quiet reminder that the monumental changes we crave often start with the tiniest actions. Yet in a world where achievements are measured in giant leaps, it's easy to feel paralyzed by the sheer scale of what we think we need to accomplish. He was no different. A middle-aged professional with a growing family, a mortgage, and a demanding job, he felt like he was constantly running out of time. Every day began with the same ritual, staring at his endless to-do list and feeling the crushing weight of everything he hadn't yet achieved. The thought of tackling even one item seemed impossible, so he did what many of us do. He procrastinated. He scrolled through his phone, comparing himself to others who seemed to have it all figured out, silently berating himself for falling behind. But one day, something shifted. He stumbled upon an idea, simple yet profound. Instead of attempting to tackle everything at once, he decided to start small. His first step, committing just 2 minutes a day to focus on the task that felt most pressing. The first time he did this, he laughed at how insignificant it seemed. 2 minutes? What difference could that possibly make? Here's the twist. It made all the difference. That tiny act of starting, even for just 2 minutes, created momentum. And momentum, as he discovered, is incredibly powerful. Within a week, he found himself working longer, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. Each completed task, no matter how small, gave him a shot of confidence and clarity. It wasn't long before he started finishing more in a day than he had in weeks before. Modern neuroscience explains this phenomenon. When you complete a small task, your brain releases dopamine, the feel-good chemical that motivates you to keep going. Stoicism understood this long before science could explain it. By focusing on what is within our control, no matter how small, we take meaningful steps toward mastery over ourselves and our lives. What he didn't expect was how this shift would spill into other areas of his life. He began applying the same principle to his health. Instead of trying to overhaul his diet or commit to an intense fitness routine, he started with a 10-minute walk after dinner. That walk turned into a jog. The jog eventually became a run. His improved energy made him more productive at work and more present at home. The power of small wins wasn't just about checking off tasks, it was about reshaping his entire approach to life. But Stoicism reminds us that this isn't just about achieving more. It's about learning to live in alignment with your values. He realized that each small action wasn't just progress, it was a choice. A choice to prioritize what truly mattered, to brace consistency over perfection, and find fulfillment in the act of doing, rather than in the end result. Imagine for a moment you're in his shoes. You're looking at that overwhelming task or goal. Maybe it's decluttering your home, improving your health, or finally tackling that project at work. What if, instead of thinking about the mountain you need to climb, you simply focus on taking the first step? What if you asked yourself, what can I do right now for 2 minutes to move closer to where I want to be? The Stoics knew that progress wasn't about perfection, it's about persistence. That's why small wins matter so much. They're not just tasks completed, they're proof that you're capable of more than you think. And when you focus on what you can do today, no matter how small, you create a ripple effect that can transform your life. So what's your first step? What's the one small thing you can do today to overcome that sense of overwhelm? Take it and let the rest follow. Break free from the social media trap. Man is disturbed not by things, but by the views he takes of them, said Epictetus, a Stoic reminder that our perceptions often hold more power than the events themselves. Nowhere is this more evident than in the world of social media. What we see on our screens, the perfect vacations, the immaculate homes, the flawless lives, isn't always reality. Yet we allow those images to shape how we feel about ourselves. She knew this all too well. Scrolling through her phone had become a daily ritual. Each swipe brought another polished snapshot of someone's highlight reel. Friends with perfect families, coworkers with promotions, even strangers living in what seemed like constant bliss. She'd put her phone down, feeling drained and inadequate, comparing her behind-the-scenes struggles to the curated perfection of others. And like so many of us, she'd pick it up again moments later, chasing validation through likes and comments. One evening, after a long day at work, she found herself mindlessly scrolling again, her dinner sitting untouched in front of her. That's when her son, no more than 8 years old, looked up from his plate and said, "Mom, are you famous?" Startled, she laughed and asked why. He shrugged and said, "You're always on your phone. I thought maybe you were talking to fans." It was funny, but it stung. She realized she wasn't just chasing an illusion, she was letting it rob her of what truly mattered. The Stoics would call this a misplaced focus, letting external things dictate internal peace. Social media had become her master, pulling her strings like a puppet. But instead of feeling ashamed, she chose to see it as a turning point. She decided to experiment. For the next week, she limited her social media use to just 30 minutes a day. To keep herself accountable, she set a timer. When the timer went off, she had to put the phone down, no matter how tempting it was to check just one more post. It felt ridiculous at first, like being grounded as an adult. But something surprising happened. She started filling that time with other activities. She dusted off an old journal, went for evening walks, and even rediscovered her love for painting. For the first time in months, she felt genuinely connected to herself and to her family. The truth is that the curated perfection we see online is an illusion. Neuroscience shows that every like triggers a dopamine hit, creating a cycle of short-term gratification but long-term dissatisfaction. We scroll, seeking fulfillment, but end up feeling emptier than before. Social media isn't inherently bad, but when it begins to shape our self-worth, we've handed it too much power. Why compare your whole story to someone else's highlight reel? What good does it do to seek validation from strangers when the people who truly matter sit right in front of you? The Stoics believed in focusing on what's within our control. We can't control what others post, but we can control how we engage with it. She learned to ask herself a simple question before picking up her phone. What am I looking for? Often, the answer wasn't anything profound, just boredom or a fleeting need for distraction. Recognizing that helped her choose more fulfilling alternatives. Here's where the story takes an unexpected twist. By limiting her time online, she didn't just regain her peace of mind, she also found herself less judgmental of others. When she wasn't constantly comparing, she began to appreciate people for who they were, not who they appeared to be. Stoicism teaches us to approach life with equanimity, free from envy or disdain. By stepping back from the digital noise, she was able to embody that principle more fully. So, let me ask you, how often do you check your phone without even realizing it? How many hours a week do you lose to scrolling? Time that could be spent on something that truly fulfills you. Imagine what you could do with just a fraction of that time. Read a book, reconnect with loved ones, or even pick up a skill you've always wanted to learn. She didn't give up social media entirely, and maybe you don't need to either. But by redefining her relationship with it, she reclaimed her sense of self. Her story is a reminder that the freedom we seek isn't found in likes, shares, or follows. It's found in the quiet moments when we choose presence over performance. As you think about this, consider your own habits. What would happen if you took a week to test the waters? Just 30 minutes of scrolling each day, replaced with something you've been neglecting. Maybe it's a walk around the neighborhood, a call to an old friend, or even sitting quietly with your thoughts. The Stoics understood that distractions are inevitable, but so is the choice to rise above them. What will you choose? Turn struggles into strengths, a mental health perspective. Just as fire tempers steel, adversity sharpens the soul. This Stoic principle from Seneca reminds us that struggles, while uncomfortable, are not only inevitable, but also transformative. Yet in the face of hardship, most of us don't feel like warriors tempering steel. We feel stuck, frustrated, and sometimes utterly defeated. He was no exception. A hardworking manager in his mid-40s, he had spent years building a career he was proud of. But then came the curveball. A sudden corporate restructuring left him without a job. At first, he handled it the way most people would. Panicked Googling, sleepless nights, and a growing sense of inadequacy. How could this happen? Wasn't he doing everything right? The world suddenly seemed unfair, and he couldn't see a way forward. One morning, in the haze of self-doubt, he stumbled upon Marcus Aurelius's words. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. It hit him hard. While he couldn't change what had happened, he realized he could change how he approached it. He decided to treat his situation not as a dead end, but as a challenge to grow stronger. At first, this decision felt more like wishful thinking. He forced himself to write down one lesson from the experience each day, even if it was something small, like I need to update my skills or networking is more important than I thought. It wasn't easy, especially on days when his self-esteem was barely hanging on. But over time, something shifted. These small lessons began to pile up, creating a sense of clarity and purpose. Here's where it gets interesting. Instead of rushing to find a new job just to fill the void, he chose to take a step back. He spent time identifying what truly mattered to him. Why had he been so devastated by losing this role? Was it the job itself or the identity it gave him? This was a classic Stoic exercise, separating what is essential from what is merely superficial. And the answer surprised him. He realized he didn't miss the late nights or endless meetings. He missed the sense of contribution, the feeling that his work mattered. This realization led to an unexpected twist. Instead of chasing a similar role in the same industry, he pivoted entirely. He began consulting, offering his expertise on his own terms. It wasn't easy. There were months when he worried about making ends meet, but the freedom to shape his work reignited a passion he hadn't felt in years. The struggle he once feared had become the foundation for something greater. This story isn't unique. Neuroscience shows that overcoming adversity rewires the brain, strengthening resilience and problem-solving skills. Every time you face a challenge and come out on the other side, you're not just surviving, you're evolving. Stoicism teaches us to lean into this process, to see struggles not as obstacles, but as opportunities. But let's be honest, who wakes up in the middle of a crisis and thinks, wow, what a great chance to grow? No one. And that's okay. The key is to ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can this make me stronger? Even the smallest answer to those questions can start to shift your perspective. Of course, humor helps too. He often laughed at the irony of his situation. He used to tell his team to embrace change, and now he was being forced to follow his own advice. That little bit of humor kept him grounded, reminding him not to take himself too seriously. So let's turn this to you. Think about a recent challenge you've faced. Maybe it's a setback at work, a strained relationship, or even just the daily grind wearing you down. What if you looked at it differently? What if, instead of asking, why me, you asked, what is this teaching me? The Stoics believed that adversity is where we find our true selves. It's easy to feel confident and composed when life is smooth, but who are you when the storm hits? That's the real test. And here's the beauty of it. The test isn't about passing or failing, it's about learning. Imagine this. A friend comes to you with the same problem you're facing right now. What advice would you give them? Chances are, you'd tell them to focus on what they can control, to take small steps forward, and to be kind to themselves along the way. So why not offer yourself the same compassion? He didn't wake up one day and magically stop struggling. But by reframing his situation, leaning into the discomfort, and looking for lessons, he turned his greatest challenge into a stepping stone. And you can too. As you sit with this idea, ask yourself, what struggle in your life could become your next great teacher? The lesson is waiting. You just have to be willing to see it. Speak your truth, the key to authentic relationships. Silence is better than unmeaning words, said Pythagoras, echoing a sentiment deeply cherished by Stoics. But silence isn't the same as avoiding truth. It's about speaking only what is necessary, meaningful, and true. That balance can transform not just how we see ourselves, but also how we connect with others. He was a man known for his charm. In every room, he could tell a joke, steer the conversation, or offer just the right comment to smooth over tension. But beneath the surface, he often felt like he was acting. It wasn't that he lied outright. He just avoided the hard truths. If a friend let him down, he'd brush it off rather than confront them. When his wife asked how he felt about their growing distance, he'd deflect with humor. It seemed easier that way, avoiding the discomfort of honesty. Then came the dinner party that changed everything. His closest friend asked if he was okay. Something about the way it was asked, a little too knowing, a little too gentle, made him uncomfortable. He wanted to say, "I'm fine," as usual, but instead the words tumbled out. Not really. The moment felt like a crack in a dam, and he started sharing what he'd been holding back for months, his fears about work, his uncertainty in his marriage, and how lost he felt. The room went quiet. For a moment, he regretted saying anything, imagining judgment or pity. Instead, his friend smiled and said, "Finally, you're being real." That evening, they talked openly for hours. It wasn't just about him anymore. His honesty created a space where others felt safe to share their own truths. The conversations were deeper than he'd had in years. It felt raw, but it also felt right. Why do we avoid speaking our truth? Is it because we fear rejection, or because we believe that smoothing over conflict will make life easier? Stoicism teaches that living authentically, being true to our values and words, is the cornerstone of inner peace. When we withhold the truth or sugarcoat it, we create a gap between who we are and who we pretend to be. That gap doesn't just hurt us, it erodes trust in our relationships. He began to test this idea in small ways. At work, instead of agreeing with a project timeline he knew was unrealistic, he voiced his concerns. To his surprise, his colleagues respected his honesty, and the team adjusted their approach. At home, he started sharing his fears and hopes with his wife, not just the polished version of himself. They fought more often at first, but they also started understanding each other on a deeper level. The real surprise? Speaking the truth wasn't as terrifying as he'd imagined. It felt like stepping out of a mask he didn't realize he'd been wearing. Humor became his ally in this process. When he admitted to a friend that he'd been avoiding their calls because he was overwhelmed, he added with a grin, "It's not you. It's me. Actually, it's definitely me." The friend laughed, and they moved forward with no resentment. Honesty doesn't always have to be heavy. It can be human and lighthearted, which often makes it easier to receive. But Stoic principles remind us that truth isn't just about what we say to others, it's also about what we say to ourselves. How often do we avoid the uncomfortable truths within us? How often do we settle for a life that doesn't align with our values because it's easier than confronting the hard questions? The Stoics believed that self-deception is the root of much suffering. If you can't be honest with yourself, how can you expect to live authentically with others? Imagine for a moment that you decided to live your life without pretense. What would change? Would you lose certain relationships that rely on you playing a role? Maybe. But wouldn't the ones that remain be stronger, built on mutual respect and understanding? And wouldn't your own peace of mind, free from the weight of acting, be worth it? He didn't become perfectly honest overnight. There were still moments when he hesitated, worried about how the truth might land. But he noticed something powerful. Each time he chose honesty, he felt lighter. Each time he spoke his truth, he felt closer to the people around him. The relationships that mattered most grew deeper, and the ones that couldn't withstand authenticity began to fade. And that was okay. So here's the question for you. What truth have you been holding back, either from someone else or from yourself? Maybe it's a difficult conversation you've been avoiding, or maybe it's a truth about your life that you haven't been ready to face. What would happen if you spoke it? Would it be messy? Maybe. Would it be worth it? Definitely. The Stoics understood that truth is both a sword and a shield. It cuts through illusion and protects us from living a life that isn't truly ours. So the next time you're faced with a choice to speak or stay silent, ask yourself, is this my truth? And if it is, why not share it? After all, the only thing more painful than withholding the truth is living without it. Pursue the endless goal, the art of lifelong growth. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it, said Seneca, challenging us to rethink how we spend our days. For the Stoics, life wasn't about reaching a finish line, but about growing continuously, no matter the stage or circumstance. It's a concept that resonates deeply, especially when we realize that the pursuit of growth can itself be the source of fulfillment. He had always been goal-oriented. Early in his career, he set clear milestones: land promotion by 30, buy a house by 35, and retire early to travel the world. By his mid-40s, he'd checked most of the boxes, yet something was missing. He had a good job, a nice home, and plenty of savings, but life felt oddly stagnant. The excitement he'd once felt chasing his ambitions was gone, replaced by a dull sense of routine. He started to wonder, was this it? Was life just a series of tasks to be completed, followed by a slow coast to the end? One evening, he stumbled across another quote from Marcus Aurelius. "Look well into thyself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if thou wilt always look." It stuck with him. He realized his problem wasn't a lack of accomplishments, it was a lack of purpose. He'd been so focused on achieving external goals that he'd stopped growing internally. What if, instead of chasing an endpoint, he focused on becoming better, little by little, every day? This idea felt daunting at first. After all, where do you even start with something as abstract as lifelong growth? But the beauty of Stoic philosophy is its practicality. He decided to begin small, with one simple question each morning. What can I do today to grow? Sometimes the answer was as straightforward as reading for 20 minutes. Other times it was more challenging, like having a difficult conversation he'd been avoiding. Each choice, no matter how minor, became a step forward. Here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. By focusing on small, consistent growth, he found himself pursuing goals he'd never considered before. He started learning Spanish, not because he needed it, but because he wanted the challenge. He took up gardening, discovering a surprising sense of peace in the dirt and sunlight. These weren't grand, life-changing pursuits, but they filled his days with curiosity and purpose. Modern neuroscience backs up this approach. The brain craves novelty and progress. Each time we tackle something new or push ourselves just a little further, it activates reward centers that keep us motivated. The Stoics, without the benefit of brain scans, understood this instinctively. They knew that fulfillment comes not from resting on achievements, but from striving towards something greater, even if that something is never fully attained. He also began to see the deeper wisdom in setting goals that evolve over time. When he was younger, his goals had been rigid, specific promotions and exact financial milestones. But life, as he learned, rarely sticks to a script. By shifting to goals that emphasized growth, like improving his health or deepening his relationships, he found a sense of flexibility that allowed him to adapt without losing direction. Of course, it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were days when he felt frustrated, wondering if this endless pursuit was just another way to keep himself busy. But he kept coming back to the question, what would I rather do? Coast through life or keep climbing? The answer was always the same. He wanted the climb, the challenge, the adventure of knowing he could be better tomorrow than he was today. There's humor in this too. He joked with friends that he was the only middle-aged man in his neighborhood trying to learn the piano. "My neighbors must think I'm torturing a cat," he'd laugh after another awkward practice session. But the piano wasn't about mastery, it was about the joy of trying. And that joy spilled over into other areas of his life, making him more patient, more present, and yes, more fulfilled. So, let me ask you, when was the last time you did something just to grow? Not because it checked a box or earned you recognition, but because it challenged you in a way that made you feel alive. What would happen if you let go of the idea of arriving and instead embrace the idea of always becoming? The Stoics believed that the pursuit of virtue, wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline was the ultimate lifelong goal. These virtues aren't achievements to be completed, they're practices to be refined. And in refining them, we refine ourselves. Imagine this: you're 10 years older, looking back on your life. Would you rather see a list of finished tasks or a story of ongoing growth? The beauty of lifelong growth is that it's never too late to begin. Whether you're 25 or 65, there's always room to learn, improve, and contribute. He didn't climb every mountain or master every skill, but that wasn't the point. The point was that he tried, that he spent his days in the pursuit of something meaningful, and in that pursuit, he found the endless goal that made life worth living. What's your next step in the climb? The answer is waiting, just beyond your comfort zone. Are you ready to take it? Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity, said Seneca. This simple truth encapsulates everything we've discussed today. From the power of small wins to the courage to speak your truth, each lesson is a step toward a life that's not just lived, but truly embraced. It's not about perfection or overnight change. It's about consistent, intentional growth. Think back on the principles we explored. Small, achievable steps can help you overcome overwhelm. Breaking free from social media allows you to reclaim authenticity. Struggles, though uncomfortable, can reveal your greatest strengths. Speaking your truth strengthens relationships, and pursuing lifelong growth keeps your journey meaningful. These aren't abstract ideas. They're actionable steps that can transform your mindset and, by extension, your life. Now here's the challenge. What's one thing you can apply today? Maybe it's committing to a 2-minute task, limiting your social media use, or having an honest conversation you've been avoiding. Small actions, practiced consistently, lead to profound change. So, what does your journey look like from here? Share your thoughts in the comments, your struggles, your successes, or even the first step you plan to take. Let's build a community that supports growth and authenticity. If you find this video helpful, hit like and subscribe to Stoic Narratives Official. Together, let's continue exploring how timeless Stoic wisdom can enrich our modern lives. Your journey is just beginning. Are you ready to take the next step?